corporate abuse, free market system exploitation, financial market exploitation, worker exploitation, worker abuse, wage slavery. All of these terms basically are one and the same thing. It's basically the abuse of the employee by an employer. And like I've said many times, this is inherent in the free market system, in the alleged free market system, in the capitalist society that we live under. This is basically embedded and intertwined in the system itself. It is weaved into the fabric of the system. Quick comparison, you wouldn't put a child molester left alone in the same room with a bunch of school children. You would not put a drug addict alone in a room with a bunch of drugs. You would not put a convicted murderer, criminal, and psychopath in the same room with a bunch of knives and guns with other people around close by. You would not put a complete bully, abuser, a known harasser, a known basically bully or person that takes advantage of another in the same room with a person, or let's say a minor that's completely oblivious of what's going on in the world, and someone that's just completely unexperienced and fragile and vulnerable and weak and powerless. You will not put those two people in the same room. Like Steve Weinstein, as if you have recently looked at the news, he was found out to be, this is a Hollywood movie director, big time, top of his career, and he was found out after many decades to be a sexual abuser, sexual predator with many of the women that he hired and promoted for his movies, for his productions, whatever it may be. Now, knowing that, you would not put that man together in a room by himself with an actress. I mean, you don't mix certain things. Just like you don't mix, poison and food. You don't mix gasoline and fire. Same thing, I think, should be happening to some extent, at the very least, with the free market system. You cannot put people with much power, economic, financial, and basically business power, in the same room with people with little or no power. Again, financial, business, or economic. You cannot put those two individuals or individuals in the same room together. And if you think about it, that's exactly what goes on in a daily basis throughout the whole nation every single day. People with no power or very little power are mixed together. They mingle, they work, they spend their time, their entire careers, many times, most of their waking hours, for most Americans, they spend their times, most of their day, at work, in very, very close proximity to people with power, people with much more power than they. Many people spend their time with their bosses, with their supervisors, with their uh, managers, with the company owners, with the board of director members, with CEOs, with whatever O's that they may want to call themselves nowadays. Many workers, people that are very low in the corporate ladder, spend much time with people of the higher echelons of the company. Some may look at this as, oh yeah, that person, that low level employee should look at it as an opportunity to better themselves, to go up the ladder, go up the ranks of the company, to basically expose themselves and show their bosses what they're all about. But in reality, when you step back and rationally think about it a little bit, all they're doing is butt kissing. All they're doing is befriending the owner. All they're doing is taking that opportunity, that advantage of close proximity to access to their bosses, to their superiors, to charm them, to sweeten them up, to make them their friends. Very little, if any, of it is showing them who you are, what you got, to to contribute, what you've got, your skills. Very little of it, if any, is about that. Most of it is about friendship, about having lunch together, perhaps playing golf. Many times is sexually oriented, where if your boss is of the opposite sex, some sexual advance or innuendos, or at the very least the potential of there being something there, of something happening, could trigger a boss or a supervisor or manager to treat that person differently, treat that person with more advantage, with more preferential treatment, and offer more opportunities for growth, for pay, to that person more so than any other person that is not in such close contact with the person in power. And again, bosses, supervisors are often and routinely in contact with access, with power over very low and very powerless employees. Many of the times they're in close proximity for daily work. They're in the same building, the same room, the same office, even in the same office, just sharing different desks maybe. Perhaps they are in a production plant and their office is right there, and the company owner or the company manager, CEO, is often in contact with many employees. And in many cases, I'm not going to say all, but in many cases this is just an unfair and a situation that leads to a environment of fear, an environment of unfairness, an environment of inequality. I mean, if you put a person that has no power in the company other than just coming to work and performing a menial task, a repetitive, monotonous, boring, and unwanted task, that person, the only power they have is over the small amount of work or production that they're responsible for. I'm talking about a production plant or something like that. That's about the only power that person has a small amount of power over the production levels that the company can output. It has a small amount of power over the product, but that's about it. That person has no power over what goes on, the direction of the company, has no power over the rules, the regulations of the company, what happens, how things are done, how things are scheduled, how many hours workers work, how many days a week they work, what days of the week they work, how their product is made, who they sell their products to, where the products go. They have no power over any of that. They have no power over any of the organization of the company, the structure, the pay, benefits, none of it. But yet they are in contact quite often, if not daily, with the people that have power over all or a lot of these things. And that person, of course, is much more valuable to the company because the company depends on that person, not nearly as much as the worker, the one that actually produces the product or helps produce a product. That worker is not nearly as valuable in the eyes of the entire community, the entire free market system. It's not nearly as valuable as that CEO, as that manager, as that supervisor. And yet we mix these people together every day, in and out, throughout the entire free market system. This is not only here in the United States, but worldwide. And should we be surprised at all that abuse is so rampant in the workplace, that mistreatment, that disrespect, that sexual advances, as we have found out in the unwanted sexual advances, that as we have found out with the Me Too movement here in the late 2017 or the 2018, as we have found out that sexual abuse, sexual harassment, discrimination, bullying, basically unequal just about everything for not only women but for minorities, blacks, Hispanics, and other races. The abuse and the discrimination is just rampant again and has spread like wildfire. And as I've said many times, this is a problem of the system because the way it is set up. It is set up where just like a kingdom, just like a anarchy, not an anarchy, but a monarchy, set up like a monarchy where there are kings and royals, and then there are paupers and peasants and servants. And this is the way it is set up. It is set up with a mixture of militaristic dictatorship, with a mixture of royal feudalism and monarchy and totalitarianism. It's a mix of everything that's bad, all of these systems that are oppressive, all the systems that have been proven to be detrimental for human well-being and happiness, and all of these things that are just determined to be and found to be bad for our society, for a way of government, is mixed in. It is part of the capitalistic free market system. It is basically, why do I say this? Let's take it step by step. It's a dictatorship because you have, as a worker, no say as far as what you do, what you say, what the product is like, again, like I just mentioned, what the company rules and regulations are, what the method and the hierarchy of the company, the pay structure, all of that. You have no say. Just like a dictatorship, you do as you're told, or else, or you just, are fired or quit or just leave and not get paid. That's basically the classic definition of a dictatorship. It is an anarchy, a monarchy, because the kings and the queens are up at the top, and they basically look over their kingdom, and every word that comes out of their mouth is final, is gospel, is like a commandment, is basically absolute power. This is what CEOs are like in companies. And within their companies, yes, their power doesn't extend much to the worker's life outside of work. Not much, but a substantial amount does. But focusing on the workplace, this is where the reign is, the monarchy.